It's a Final Word Cricket podcast. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon recording together. Series 11, Episode 12. It's the 11th of January. It's about as midsummer as you can get. We're sat outside. You're wearing a bluey singlet. I'm wearing a flannelette shirt. You're wearing... Are they shorts?
I guess they're shorts.
Or are they just boxer shorts? They're probably shorts. If you're watching on YouTube, you can make your own decision.
Yep.
I'm still wearing black jeans and black shoes.
Call
that a packing mishap. Yes, I'm looking very Melbourne.
It's just Melbourneian. Black canvas shoes, black jeans, red and black flannel. Can't get any more
go
Melbourne
wrong
than
with that. But we are here together. This might actually be the last time we record the weekly show together before I go back to London after the Hobart test. We'll see. Time will tell. We have got plenty to get through on the show today. Of course, there's one more test to go in the Ashes series. New Zealand have been playing Bangladesh in a series that's had a lot of interest, as has been the series in South Africa between the Proteas and India. The Women's Ashes starts next week. We've got stuff to share about Woodstock, about Brick Lane, about Nerd Pledge, about the Big Bash League. There's loads going on, and it's lovely to be sat here recording with you at a place that I've seen through the camera screen about 100 times through the English summer. I kind of thought it might be like a small balcony setup. You've got quite a nice little backyard here.
Yes, we've got a sizable yard, got a bunch of couches, got some AstroTurf. Needs to have some AstroTurf. That's compulsory Melbourne activity. Got the outside beer fridge for the brick lanes. Everything that you need. Lots of plants, lots of sunshine. Glorious day in Melbourne. And we had something that we enjoyed, which was a glorious last day draw. Nothing that tragics of the game like more than a last day. Last ball. Not all 4 results on the line, but still 2 results on the line coming down to the very last delivery of the test match.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, sometimes you can get to the final half an hour or hour and there's 2 results and it's drifting. This didn't drift. It was, as we described on the Daily Show, it was a wonderful finish and has received a lot of plaudits accordingly. Some people get a bit upset when you talk about, what a great finish. They'll go, yeah, but Australia... That's the 3rd time they haven't bowled out a team at home in the 4th innings. Like, yeah, that's true, but I don't really care if Australia won or otherwise. I like the fact that it was a competitive test match that went down to the wire, and there is a beauty in a team that's outmatched, and England have been outmatched, doing enough to hold on. I remember Jason Holder's team came here in 15-16, and the Sydney test match was more or less washed out. Steve Smith, new captain, put to Holder before the morning of day 5. Let's both declare an innings and set up a chase, a la Hansi Cronje and the leather jacket, but without the leather jacket and without Hansi Cronje, a more sort of county cricket style. Let's both declare an innings and set up a chase. And Jason Holder at the time said, no, my team need to learn how to draw before we can start winning. And I feel kind of the same about England right now. They've got this rebuild going on. They're going to the Caribbean, and then they've got New Zealand at home, South Africa at home, one test against India at home. They're not going to be winning many test matches in the short term. They might do okay at home, but I mean, the truth is they're a team that's in crisis, maybe on the way to transition, and they need to find a way to learn how to not lose first, and they did that the other day. So
equally, had Steve Smith taken a wicket off the last ball, it would also have been a great finish.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
exactly.
All of those things can be true. The result was the result, whatever it was, but having a live game all the way down to the end like that is exciting, and that's why we enjoy, when you've invested all of that time into it and then it delivers. That's the payoff.
Yeah, and I'm kind of fired up again about the series. It's a shame that it's 3-0 going to Hobart that's finishing this week, because I've had my enthusiasm for this series. I probably, if I'm honest...
Should be a 9-test series, frankly.
It should be 7.
I think they should expand it.
Well, we did joke and say it should be 7 like 1970-71, but they didn't listen to us.
No. This is like Death in the Bill and Ted movie, when he's like, best of 3, and then he loses at Twister and Monopoly, and then he's like, best of 5 and best of 7.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, if I'm honest, I had lost a bit of energy after the Melbourne test, because I thought, well, they're going to lose 5-0. We're off to Sydney where it's COVID central, and we're all going to come back with coronavirus, and it's going to be over in 3 days, and we're going to have a terrible time. In the end, we both came back without coronavirus, and it was a good test match. So we're on the way to Hobart on the 13th, the day before that test.
We're going to win 5-0. We're going. It's one of the few moments of humour from the. I'll be frank here. Sometimes the English crowd support I find less than inventive. And not particularly exciting. But during 2013, when they played 2 series back to back, and England won the first 2 test matches over there, and the chant for those first 2 games was all, we're going to win 10-0, we're going to win 10-0. And then in the third test, when they finally called it off as a draw on the last day, like as soon as the announcement went up, they all went, we're going to win 9-0. That was a little more inventive.
Yeah, I think the Barmy Army, I like parts of the Barmy Army shtick, and I certainly enjoyed what they used to do when they'd come out to Australia in huge numbers. It doesn't quite land when it's expats singing "Football's Coming Home" and sort of. They were doing the "Cry on the Telly, you're going to cry on the telly," and I'm thinking to myself, that's a Holly Stand chant from 2019 that no one that was at that test at Sydney would have been there for. They've seen that on the telly, and they're trying to do a dodgy sort of knock-off tribute band version of the Holly Stand.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Cover band version of Ash's Sledge.
That's right. A cover band version of something that was a little bit funny in 2019 for a quarter of an hour and continued through the series. Anyway, for those who do come out and travel with the England team, respect to that, but I don't think that's quite what we've got right now. It's just kind of expat football fans and students, seemingly. Based when I had the binoculars out, it seems like, that's the clientele. Anyway, enough Barmy Army bashing. It doesn't look like Scott Boland's going to play in Hobart.
Didn't look like he was going to play in Melbourne either.
True,
he did.
True. The difference being now he's got rib cartilage injury.
Right.
Was it rib separation or something like that?
Ew.
And they had to jab him up a
Isn't
number
that what
of times.
Prince had?
Yeah. No, he got a couple of ribs taken out.
Separation. He separated himself from his ribs.
Yes, well, I always found it interesting that he's only 5'3" and got a couple of ribs taken out.
Yeah, it's a difficult process.
Yeah, allegedly for some more than others. Started well. There
are reasons people take up yoga in their middle age. I'm just saying that.
I do wonder that when I'm in yoga sometimes, and I watch the very flexible yoga, like male yogis, and watch them. I can't remember what the pose is called, but when your legs are splayed and you can put your head in your crutch pretty much, and I get to about, I barely get beyond the parallel with my neck, and they're going down for the autofilate pose. I'm like, blimey, is that what's going on here?
Some quiet nights in.
Is that what's going on here? Great to bring up autofellatio within 5 minutes of hitting go on the tape. For those who are new to the final word.
I thought that was when you suck off a car.
The exhaust.
I'm exhausted.
Right. Regroup. Scott Boland had lots of jabs to get through the test in the second innings after that elbow went into the ribs and he hit the deck at full force. So
Novak Djokovic, on the other hand, didn't have any.
True, had none and got through as well. For 20 Grand Slams and 1 victory over the federal court. Another major win for Novak Djokovic. Did you see the protesters last night in Melbourne? How they thought the car driving out was him.
What I didn't get was they thought the car driving out was him, and so they started jumping on it and punching it, and they were his supporters. I think that says all you need to know about the level of intellect that's going on in that. There was like some blokes out there with the Greek flag waving it. I think you've got the wrong country champion.
Marcos Bagdatis. Marcos Bagdatis not playing this year.
A bit further. Keep going up.
Yeah,
I know Europe's small, but you're in the wrong spot.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that tradition at the first day of the Australian Open where they would kind of refight the Balkans War with plastic chairs, heaving them at each other, and the tear gas would eventually come out. Yeah. Maybe all that's gone on
ever
with
since
Novak.
the Melbourne Knights got rolled up. There hasn't been enough opportunity for Balkan War conflict. Yeah,
I used to go and watch the Melbourne Knights as a kid when they went from Melbourne, Croatia to the Melbourne Knights. I went to Summer Street a couple of times in the Viduka era, and having grown up in the southeast of Melbourne, I feel quite well versed in the conflict, but I didn't quite understand what was going on last night. That was crazy times, but good to see us.
I've got a friend who's contemporaneously who's Serbian who ended up marrying a Croatian, and it was really a thing. It was like a modern day Romeo and Juliet. There was trouble. There were problems. Thankfully they didn't wind up the same way. But they're happily married. But it took a lot of work between the families to bring them together.
If we get much deeper into this, I'm going to start swearing in Croatian. I'm going to get us in trouble. Let's move on from that.
Oh, can I? Yeah, I'm sure you would have heard the same. But I ran into Simon Kadich at the Sydney Test, and I said, how'd you go? Everyone else has got COVID, and you didn't. And he goes, COVID can't survive in 40-degree Croatian blood.
He was telling us a story. The other day, Kat, about the 2001 trip to Wimbledon, the final where they wore the baggy greens,
and Shane wore the Oakley cap.
And Kat goes on to tell us that but the thing I didn't tell anyone then until the end of the day, I was Barak and Ivanisevic being Croatian. wearing the baggy green. Goes, "Do you good thing." He was always my favourite player. The fiery crow. I mean, is there a bigger divergence between Kat's very fiery personality on the field, as he says himself, that Croatian, thick Croatian blood, compared to the mild-mannered, lovely man that he is behind the microphone? Absolutely. I mean, he can land a punch when he needs to, but, as we know, he's a fabulous fella.
What a final that was as well. Ivanisevic, wild card, 5 sets.
9-7 in the fifth. Went over 2 days, finishing it on the Monday. Yep. That was amazing. I was gutted at the time, but I realise now that Pat Rafter hasn't paid tax here for like 20 years. So,
Australian of the Year, resident of Bermuda or whatever it is.
Our Pat. Sorry, mate. I always think there should be like, when you look for the GIFs on Twitter and you want to say sorry, mate, there should be one of Pat Rafter. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
I'd use that quite a bit.
Yeah, when you've like fired back a bit too saltily at someone and you've misinterpreted what they were saying and they're like,
sorry, mate.
And you're like, sorry, mate.
So Scott Boland not playing, probably. Or he might play, but he may not. My understanding is that Stokes wants to play. Of course he wants to play. Bairstow wants to play, more likely to play out of the two of them.
Okay.
Joss has gone home. Billings probably playing.
We're definitely playing if Joss isn't there.
Well, but the Pope triangulation, they might have found a way to play Pope. But it sounds like Billings is playing. Billings did media yesterday, and it's really interesting to hear him talk about the conversation he had with Ashley Giles, the director of England cricket. He gets called up to the Test squad, for the third time this year, but the chance to seriously make his Test debut, I should say.
I've been having a lot of arguments with people about this. There are always English people who get very superior about the Australian pronunciation. Guess what the French pronunciation is?
Is it debut?
It's debut.
Debut?
It's not debut.
Yeah, let's just go with debut, our childhood pronunciation. So he was in the squad for the New Zealand series. He was in the squad when Joss took parental leave last year against India. But he actually said to Ashley Giles, I'm only doing it if you kind of promise, if you swear in blood that it's not going to affect my white ball prospects. Because remember, he was going to play in the Caribbean. It's a World Cup year. He missed the 2019 World Cup through injury. I mean, he was there in the UAE this year, and played towards the pointy end of the tournament, but wasn't in the first choice team. This will be a point that'll be discussed.
So this sets him back because he can't be in the Caribbean to start the series.
He's going to miss the white ball series that starts the day after the final Test match.
So he's basically saying, if you're going to make me go to Hobart and run drinks, and it means that I get pushed out of the white ball team, I don't want to do it.
Exactly, and I think he was willing to run drinks and wear the bib again, but it's like, don't let me get pushed in front of if that's what happens. So, but I do think he will get an opportunity. And I've actually forgot this, but he made a wonderful 100 against Australia at Manchester in the one days in 2020. 118 not out, a match-winning effort. And that was against Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood. It wasn't like a white ball attack that Australia were taking over for a Mickey Mousing. It was the only serious cricket that Australia played in 2020 in that winter. So they took their test attack. And Billings excelled against them. So, he's been threatening to be a high-class international cricketer for about 3 years now. Maybe this will be the chance. And, I guess he gets extra credit because he's someone who we all talk to, and he's interesting, and he's a great conversationalist. And, he
comes from the right kind of family, Adam.
Well, I mean, it's. I think that it probably doesn't help. Sorry, I rephrase that. It probably doesn't hurt the fact that he knows his way around the media and so on. So that at times like this, we kind of want him to do well. But we'll see whether he gets the nod. It feels like he probably will.
He's being talked up as the smoky for Test captain if Root chucks it in, which he won't because he's Root and he's got a.
Well, it's a really good story from Nick Holt in the Telegraph overnight saying that Root's not going to be asked to give up the captaincy. So
no, he would never be asked to give it up. It's only if he chose to give it up. And I think after Melbourne, he was probably thinking, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. But I genuinely think he'll get to the end of the series, he'll take a week, he'll take a deep breath, and he'll say, there is no one else to do it. I've got to keep going.
Yeah, and I think that's Holty's yarn, effectively. That they've realised that he remains the best bet to start. I mentioned the rebuild before. I mean, they go to the West Indies and they have 7 Test matches in England, and they don't want to throw someone to the Wolves when they're at their lowest ebb. It might be that he does like one more year. And then when they've sort of recovered a little bit, then he can, if someone steps up...
They need a serious candidate. And, and Billings was the only vaguely credible sort of person floated as a smoky, as someone who's got lots of captaincy experience, maybe he could come in and do that job. But, it's a big ask to come into the team to start your career and also, the legion of England, Sam Billings.
Well, I think it's too big an ask, really. I put this to Athers in our broadcast and he's like, no, believe me, that's not fair.
It would only
You can't
happen
ask
if
a
Root
guy-
quits. If Root just
Yeah.
was like, "No, I can't do
Well,
it."
his perspective was it's just not reasonable to
Yeah.
ask a guy who, the way he articulated it far better than I will, is that you can't properly appreciate just how hard Test cricket is until you're playing it, and you need to know what that experience is like before you're asked to lead a team. So it might be that Billings could play this week and all the way through the English summer, have, let's say, 9 or 10 caps under his belt, Root resigns, and then they go to Billings. That's, I think, more conceivable than the pulling the ripcord at this particular point. Because there's no Boland, or maybe no Boland. And according to Andrew Wu in the paper today, Jumping Jai still got a niggle from Hobart, from Adelaide rather. So whatever
I don't
was
think
going
it's a
on in his
niggle.
calf,
If he's out for a month, it's not a niggle.
Yeah, well that's
you
it.
know?
Whatever had gone on in his calf at Adelaide is potentially enough to keep him out of this Test match. So it could be Nisa back, in all probability. He's the last player in the squad, with Stark to play 5 in a row, which wasn't the plan, and Cummins to play 5 in a row, which I suppose was the plan. So and then Lyon to round out the attack.
Looked like he was tailing off towards the end of Sydney. He'd started to look tired.
So the option they would have in that scenario is to play Schwepson, which I wouldn't be against. But I don't
bowled
think
in
they'll do.
Hobart and a day-nighter.
I don't think it matters, honestly. I just think we're at that point now where Cameron Green or bowl first change in that scenario, and you get some overs into this kid who actually isn't a kid anymore. Swepson's now 26, and you get his cap presented and you get it dealt with before he goes to Pakistan. They won't do that, by the way. They're not going to leave out the best pink ball bowler in the history of Test cricket.
No.
Even if he is tailing off, they'll think he's still good to go and push through.
That's why they should have arrested him in Sydney.
I couldn't agree more.
I do not understand that. Like, give him a break. He's played 3 in a row. He's led the attack. He's played really well.
Player of the series to that point.
And sure, he would say that he doesn't want to rest and he wants to play all 5, but he is a less effective bowler if he plays all 5. And, when you got Steve Smith bowling the last over of the match, would have been handy to have a specialist leg spinner, wouldn't it?
Well, the numbers bear that out as well. Stark averages 23 in the first test of a series and 54 in the fifth, and they get progressively worse. And again, that's the way I explained this on when I was asked about it a couple of days ago was that Stark's got a very athletic action. He bowls at 150 clicks much of the day, and it's very taxing on his body.
You can't expect someone who does that to turn up. And it's not even a 5-test series in the normal sense where you might get 10 days off between one of the games to rest up. It's 3, 4, 5, 6 day breaks between and just straight on to the next one.
Well, this was the argument for him playing at Sydney, was that they got an 8-day break and he barely bowled in the second dig. So the argument was that, well, it's actually more like the extended break you would get in the middle of a series.
He
didn't bowl loads and loads in the second dig, so they were able to kind of manipulate it a little bit. But I thought that was just a little bit too cute, and they could have got that Swepson thing dealt with in Sydney, and it might have paid off. But anyway, it's bygones on that front. Last point I wanted to talk about in our extended intro about the Ashes was that Marnus Labuschagne is tweeting.
Is he?
He's really tweeting.
On the tweets?
On the tweets. On the toot.
Is he in the replies or is he doing his own content?
I don't know. He's in the replies. He's in the tweets big time. So much so that he ran an AMA yesterday for like an hour.
The Australian Medical Association.
He ran the Australian Medical Association. As Brendan Nelson did, you can go from the AMA to the Federal Parliament.
Dr. Karen Goldsworthy stepped aside.
Karen Phelps. I don't think she runs the AMA these days, but she certainly
she's the only AMA president.
Yes,
mentally, she's always
she was very high profile when she did it. Yeah. I think that.
Who's Karen Goldsworthy then? Is she an MP?
I don't know Karen Goldsworthy. That's somewhere deep in your subconscious somewhere. Right. If you can't bring it up after saying it, it's probably a musician from the 90s or something like that.
Sounds like a cellist.
Maybe. I just thought this was quite interesting. So he tweeted when he received the McGilvray medal, and maybe once before that, but it's been like years since he's been that involved on that platform, and now he's he's in the replies. He did an AMA. He put up 2 tweets in quick succession after the draw at Sydney. It's Freudian there. It felt like Australia had lost, but they absolutely did not. The first of which was
Goldsworthy is a writer and academic.
Okay,
Sorry, Karen.
there you go. The first of which was 9 men around the bat. Last session, day 5, how good's Test cricket? And the second one a few hours later was just like, I love cricket, or something like that. I just love cricket. The thought did cross my mind, cynical as it might well be.
Dreadlock holiday. mashup.
Yes. The thought they cross
Minus on vocals. DJ Bravo's made a connect for him.
that maybe he was advised to get a bit involved in social media.
Uh-huh.
You know, I reckon for a bloke who's the number one batsman in the world according to the ICC rankings, hasn't quite a great rep. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, he's a bit of a figure of derision, especially in the field. And we've been part of that. I mean, I think I said the other night he should never captain any team ever. And that's kind of how I feel. But maybe it's a bit of brand rehabilitation, showing he's not just some cricket robot, that he's got a bit of spunk about him, which I'm sure he does, by the way. We just haven't been given much of a view of that, because all we see of his personality is him standing at silly point or short leg or at extra cover,
yelling,
being a bit
constantly.
of a menace.
And not constantly,
and not in an aggressive,
not everything's out.
Yeah, not in a mean way, not in an aggressive way, not in a a barking dogs way from South Africa 2014, but in kind of a juvenile way. And thus, I reckon that this might be an exercise in, hey, let's just show the world that you are a grown up, and play along with a few of the guys on Twitter who are not being very nice.
Or at least
ponder.
To at least show some personality beyond appealing for balls that have missed the bat by about 9 inches. There is a degree of not so great. Like, that's all you see. All you see is the on-field stuff, and if it's all just big appeals for nothing, then you're like, just shush, all right? Just sit down. Stop yelling all the time. Stop making everyone look at you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to take a run, just don't take a run. You don't need to run every ball. Just ease it back.
It's as though he is trying to mimic Steve Smith and now he's overtaken Steve Smith with some of that stuff, and that's just, I mean, I don't know. He's a fabulous cricketer. Hard to criticise a guy who's making runs like he's been making at home since 2019. He's still probably leading the series for runs at the moment, I'd imagine, or near enough to it. So I don't want to get too carried away. But that did strike me as curious in terms of the timing. Last thing before we go to Hobart is that it's meant to rain before the test, but the word on the street is a belter 5-day track. So we'll see if those two things can be consistent. If the track's undercover a lot with rain, and there's meant to be rain through the test. I think it starts quite bad and gets a little bit better, but I mean, I suppose we said that about Sydney as well, and it was fairly volatile. Yes, cannot wait to get down there. It's going to be a great occasion for the Tasmanian cricket public. They've sold out the first 2 days. There isn't as much COVID down there, so I don't suppose there'll be that hesitancy that there was at Sydney this week, which is great. Really looking forward to backing in Tassie cricket this week. And I hope the people of Hobart get out there and sell it out, 4 days. Wouldn't that be just a beautiful thing? I can't wait till the sun sets and, those beautiful glamour shots we get at Adelaide. They're all replicated at Hobart. So there's a lot, maybe a dead rubber and all the rest, but there's a fair bit about this week that's attractive. And let's get down there.
Let's talk about Bangladesh. Tigerland. Oh, they're from Tigerland.
Blimey.
In any weather, you'll see them with a grin, resting head and shin. They knocked off Bangladesh in a test match. You will have heard about this, but we were watching this avidly. So it had the streaming going on in the radio box while also doing the test that we were doing, watching the other tests. Everybody was found this very gripping, those who are interested in cricket. They've never beaten New Zealand in any format ever. To do it over the course of 5 days, I mean, to do it over the course of a full test match, it's harder and harder. Like, underdog upsets, the shorter the game, the more possible they are. And over a test match, they become basically impossible because the quality of a better team will tell, and the quality of a team in its home conditions will tell. But, look, they went into this series. New Zealand cricket, good on them. They play Bangladesh more often than anyone. They host them on a regular basis. They had Ross Taylor announcing his retirement after this series. Big emotive thing for a long-serving player in the game. And New Zealand, they look great. They rack up 328 in the first innings. Devon Conway makes another 100 because he's just on fire at the moment. Henry Nicholls 75, Will Young 52, and you think that should be it for Bangladesh. If they're facing a team that makes 300 plus in the first innings in foreign conditions like that, they should fold. But the most important part of the match, to that point, was their whole top 8 made double figures or more. They were all consistent. A couple of 80s, 70, a 60, a 50, and they put together a massive innings. They've done this once before in New Zealand, made 500 plus back in 2019, maybe it was, and they still ended up losing by a mile. New Zealand
Shakib made a double ton and they still lost.
Yeah, exactly that. But in this case, they ended up 458 all out, so they got a lead of 130 and then hammered it home.
Yeah, Mominul Huq being the new leader and having taken over the armband from Mushfiqur, who's been a superb captain of that team, especially at white ball level. They have dropped off. It's impossible to avoid the modern history of Bangladesh cricket has been pretty grotty over the last couple of years, with the exception of that T20 win over Australia. They've not been going well, but it's that next group of players coming through. So a new captain, Lytton Das, who made runs in that middle order. He made 100 in the second test, which we'll come to in a sec. But Ebadot Hussain, crazy story really, man of the match, 6 wickets in the second dig, but effectively comes out of a reality TV show. He was playing volleyball in the military, in the Air Force, I think it was, and they did a nationwide talent search for fast bowlers, effectively a reality TV show, where he ends up getting fast-tracked through the first-class system, through the BPL, into Test cricket. He'd played about a dozen tests before this, but this was the first time that it had really paid off. And you're right, it was that grind, the fact that they were willing to do it over about 130 overs, I think it was, to build a first innings lead, which ended up being the pressure they required to put New Zealand under the pump the second time around when Ebadot kicked off.
But even then, so even the second time around, right? So the first innings deficit is 130. New Zealand are 136 for 2. So they're into the lead and they've got 8 wickets in hand. And at that point, you fully expect New Zealand will get 200 in front, and that's all they'll need, and they'll bowl out Bangladesh, and that will happen. And that's when Ebadot Hussain comes in. He's not quick. He's sort of right arm mediums, really. He played 10 tests in which he'd taken 11 wickets at an average of 81 before this spell.
Okay.
That's
Rubel Hussain numbers.
Yeah. He got Conway out early in that second innings, so that had happened. He was on the board. And then he has this sequence where he starts getting the ball to reverse, and he bowls Will Young, bowls Henry Nicholls, Tom Blundell leg before. Then the next morning, bowls Ross Taylor and has Jamison caught. So at one point he's got a spell of 3 for none, and then a bit later on he's got 5 for 7 in that spell, and he's just ripped the heart out of them. They get bowled out for 160 odd.
Yep.
And Bangladesh chase 42 to win.
And Mushfiqur hits the winning runs. It's a beautiful thing, really. There's so much to take from this. One bit is that the previous Test match they were scheduled to play in New Zealand was in February 2019, and it didn't go ahead because of the massacre in the mosque in Christchurch. I can't remember the name of the mosque, but true human tragedy, which the Bangladesh team were within moments of being caught up in themselves, going to mosque themselves on that particular day. So, that's the recent history of them being in New Zealand. Even the way that Ebadot spoke about, they made a pact with each other that they were going to fight like they'd never fought before in a Test match. Like they felt like they had a point to prove because they have been rubbish. As recently as the T20 World Cup in November, they looked as uncompetitive as they ever have in a global tournament, going back to '99 when they famously beat Pakistan and became a full member shortly thereafter. But just their 6th win away from home, which actually is. Which isn't as bad as what it sounds when you consider they've only played 60 Test matches all time away from home. And Australia and England are part of this problem. Australia haven't hosted them since 2003, as we've talked about many times. The most recent instance of where they were meant to come and didn't was 2018, when CA didn't even bother to put a press release out. And they won't play in Australia until at least 2023, when the new FTP kicks in 2024. England last hosted them in 2010. And I know I'm banging away and repeating myself, but the great thing about this was that it started that conversation again. Nick Hockley was asked about it, the chief executive of CA, about Australia's responsibility with Bangladesh. And to his great credit, he put his hand up and said, you're right. Like, they do need to do a better job with countries who are finding their way at Test level. And he spoke about Bangladesh specifically and referred to the next FTP. Like, I reckon Hockley, having had a bad start with what happened in South Africa last year, I reckon he was, and I've written this in the next edition of Wisdom Cricket Monthly, I reckon he had a bad start with South Africa. I reckon he was quite bruised by that whole thing because his personal integrity was called into question. He's a very proud man and he likes to deliver on his commitments. Thus why he doesn't like changing the schedule. He likes to go through the domestic summer the way that it's set up. That was the case last year with India. He was headstrong. You speak to anyone at CA, and they say if not for his personal leadership, that India series would have gone to shit last year. And even though I disagree with the position of playing the first test at Brisbane and through it goes, he apparently was determined to make the schedule play out the way it was announced. So with that in mind, I reckon now that he's personally going to go to Pakistan, he's committed to the Pakistan trip. He knows that Australia needs to go there. He wants them to be better global citizens. He wants the Bangladesh question to be resolved in the medium term through the FTP. And yeah, my respect for Hockley has grown in the last week when he's been talking about this. Yeah, and learning that he will be there in Pakistan with us. I reckon, credit to him for sort of realising that this way of Australian cricket, in theory, supporting these lesser countries so long as they didn't have to play them, that he will be a corrective on that thinking, I reckon, over time.
Okay. Well, I hope that's the case, and I hope the next FTP reflects that. I suppose getting Afghanistan notionally in before it got cancelled reflected that, but that was one of the few cancellations where it wasn't Cricket Australia just trying to save themselves some effort. They wanted to play that test because they had money on the line. But yeah, the even what was floating about the possibility of playing a test against Ireland, those sort of things might happen. I guess Bangladesh were hungover in the second test, or New Zealand were pissed off because they came back hard, made 521, Latham 252. I think that's Kane Williamson's best as well, isn't it? The 252.
No, but the 252 is on that list of scores that's never been made.
Oh, right.
So when we haven't hit the holy ground of 229 yet, but 252 is about the fifth highest score. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. The fifth lowest score yet to be made. So Kane might have been 253, I reckon.
I think.
Yeah, but so Latham gets there. Was it Latham who was given out twice in an over?
No, it was Will Young.
Will Young and after Bangladesh, not unreasonably at Hagley, looking at a green top. We've been to Hagley before. I mean, I can't wait to get back to Hagley Oval. Those pictures were beautiful over the 3 days they played. But if you see a green top there, you could be excused for bowling first, having taken 20 wickets the previous
How many times do we have to warn people? Green pitches in New Zealand
don't mean anything.
They're not green.
No,
they don't play green.
They're fraudulently green.
They look green.
Yeah, but you can see why they did it, having taken 20 wickets and try and put New Zealand under pressure again.
They're not a green mamba. They're a green mamba painted on a concrete surface. Don't get sucked in. But look, it was Will Young who was given out twice and had it overturned twice, and then edged the one to slip that got dropped, and then had the overthrows, and so he got 7 runs from being dropped at slip.
And how about Eberdot having to chase down? I keep saying his name, having to chase down the 4 overthrows as well. It was he who had to slide in. You got to feel for the guy. But also committed to the cause.
He also had overthrows that conceded a 5 in that innings, so he's the first bowler ever to concede a 5 and a 7. None of which was his fault.
Andrew Sampson dug that one out about 24 hours later. Bless him.
There haven't been a lot of 7s. There have been 6 7s in the history of Test cricket.
There have been 4 8s.
There we go. 4 8s.
Are you familiar with any of them?
No, don't think so.
How you do it is by running 4 and then having 4 overthrows. Right. Andrew Simons at the Gabba in 2008, and it was Ian O'Brien who was bowling at the time, a friend of the pod. There was...
I thought that was down as one of the 7s. I thought they ran 4 and should have been given 8, but they were only given 7.
It was 8. According to Cricinfo, it's an 8.
Okay.
There's an 8 where... Brian Lara had the helmet hit behind the keeper via Mark Boucher, so it was 3 plus 5. Yeah. These days that would go down as penalty runs. Then it went to the batter. Right. There was one, Patsy Hedren was involved in one at 28-29 at Melbourne.
Yeah.
And there's one
Probably
other.
Just because the ground was so big that they had time to run 8.
Oh, and Rod Marsh was the other one who an errant throw from him, which created 4 overthrows. I can't remember who the batter was, but I think it was a New Zealander in 1981. I looked it up during the week just to clarify. So if you're curious about these matters, there you go.
And there's the famous 9 from Murum Gunaram on the 1868 tour, where it wasn't an overthrow situation. It was just that there was a posh bloke fielding at mid-off who refused to chase the ball, and they had an argument about whether he should chase it or not, and they just kept running. And so by the time he finally went and got it, they'd run 9.
Have you noticed that whenever these like unusual instances come up with 7s or 8s, you always get tweeted into your feed that apocryphal tale about Victoria and New South Wales and the 266 off one ball when the ball gets caught up a tree. Stop tweeting that. That
didn't happen.
is bullshit.
Yeah.
You don't need to keep tweeting that out there.
Yeah.
I know it comes up on Google, but it's been debunked many, many times.
Didn't know. I've had to get a bow and arrow to shoot it out of the tree. Anyway, look, Bangladesh got hammered by an innings and 117 runs. So New Zealand 521 in the first. Taylor made 28, got a guard of honour coming out to the middle. Nice stuff. Yeah. Nice Test cricket things. And then Bangladesh all out 126 and then all out 278 following on. 5-wicket haul for Bolt in the first innings. Lytton Dust made 102 for a bit of fun in the second.
Happy about that. He's a player.
Yeah.
He's a proper player, Lytton Dust. And how about Rossco taking a wicket, his third Test wicket, with his final ball in Test cricket, much to the enjoyment of the Christchurch crowd. They chuck him the ball when it's 9 down, and Eberdot, who had a sequence of
10 innings of naught or naught not out.
There you go. Yeah, we had that sent to us during the week. He got to 4 and then hit a ball that was 2 feet outside the off stump from around the wicket, straight in the air, taken by Tom Latham, appropriately enough, after making his 252. Latham became the first player to make a 250 and take 5 catches in an innings, I think it was.
It was
in a match or
basically
something like
Alex Carey's shot from the first innings at Sydney.
Yes.
Sorry, Carey fans, but
no,
it was.
well, you're going to get in trouble for saying that.
Yeah, I know. You know,
you can't criticise Alex Carey.
No.
We've both found that out in recent days.
No.
But yeah,
my favourite thing is people who accuse you of state bias. I'm like, I could not give less of a shit about being Victorian.
Yeah,
it means nothing.
I copped this in the YouTube comments the other day, saying that I'm one of the pundits who are pushing for Marcus Harris's retention because I'm Victorian. I'm like, he's from fucking Perth, and I don't care. And I don't care. And
he's not very good.
And I've said like 50 times that Karachi's what matters. Hobart, whatever. Like, sure. If Harris plays, sure. Khawaja plays, Head plays, yeah. 2 of them are going to play.
Frankly, George Bailey could open in Hobart.
Yeah,
it's a farewell.
One of them isn't going to play. And look, it feels as though Khawaja's going to play regardless, and Harris will be left out. But it doesn't really matter because they're playing 9 tests in Asia. Well, that's the real quiz, and Khawaja's clearly opening in all of them. So let's not get too worried, right? Yeah.
Can Marcus Harris throw a kettle over a pub? so that was Bangladesh and New Zealand. India and South Africa. This has been good, and I think by the time this episode goes out, they will have played a day of the third Test match. They're going to start in a couple of hours after when we're recording this, but. The first 2, plenty to gnaw on. A couple of pretty decent contests. India going over there. They want this. This is their complete the set. You know, they won in Australia. They won asterisk in England. I mean, frankly, they won in England.
Well, they're 2-1 up, and they're going to win, and they're going to beat England by a fucking mile in the 5th Test.
But also, I don't care. Like, honestly, if they win a Test match 12 months later, to me, that's not the same series.
Yeah, but I'll put it this way: I wouldn't be too worried about India winning the last Test. Yeah. At this stage. Yeah.
But regardless, they want to go to South Africa and win there. They haven't done it before, have they?
Good question.
They've never won a series in South Africa.
Yeah, I know South Africa have always had the wood over them over there. They beat them there heavily. 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when Lungi and Gidi burst onto the scene and bowled with Rabada, and looked like they were going to just dominate, and they have for large parts.
They've won a few matches, but I'm pretty sure I'm sure they've never won a series.
Oh, you know what it was? They beat India just before we went over there to South Africa
in a crazy series where India won the third Test, I believe, and they had a wild pitch that was just out to get everybody, and the teams were getting bowled out for 120 v 140 and all kinds of business. So it wasn't quite that rugged at Centurion, but King Legend Rahul made a ton opening the batting. So they've
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Easy as ABC. They've got him opening with Mayank Agarwal at the top of the order. So he made 123. They made 327. Ngidi, who you just mentioned, 6 for 71. Pujara, golden duck in the first innings, but Rahane made 48. I see the sack Pujara and Rahane train is back in full swing, although...
I mean, you could say that. Yeah. I'm now having tweets sent back to me that I sent like a year ago about Rahane saying, see, I told you he's shit. Yeah. I'm like, don't give a fuck, first of all, and second of all, like, he's not shit.
48 in the first Test and 50 in the second. Obviously terrible. I can't play in low-scoring matches in South Africa. Anyway, they knocked over South Africa for 197. Mohammad Shami did the job, 5 for 44. And then India all out cheaply the second time around. Rabada and Marco Jansen, who's a very exciting prospect. Saw him bowl in the IPL a bit. Super tall, very quick, whips it down. One of those sort of beanpole bowlers. He took 4 wickets. And that meant South Africa had 304 to win, and the Indian quicks shared the wickets around, bowled them out for 191, and India were away.
And Kohli got a couple of starts and missed out, and then before the second test got a bout of shaggers back right before the start of the test match, and they put in King Legend to captain. I think I read somewhere that he's the first Indian since Azharuddin to captain the test team before captaining the white ball team. Like, there's been that apprenticeship using the white ball team to prepare their leaders. But
he's the first king to captain the team since the Nawab of Patowdy.
True, yes, or maybe Tiger Patowdy was technically a king as well.
Yep.
Who's to know? But yeah, the second test match was a screamer, or at least it was a screamer until the end, when it kind of ended up being quite a comprehensive win for the home side.
But even in that last innings, Elgar bats through for 94,
96,
96. But if he'd got out anywhere within 20 runs of the end, it could have been game on.
Yeah, it could have been. And part of that's due to the way that India batted in the second innings. The first time around, they got an okay start, but lost Pujara and Rahane in consecutive deliveries to Dwan Olafia, who's on the way back. And that was the innings from Rahane when I started copping pelters. And Rahane and Pujara out in single digits, Rahane the golden duck. KL Rahul, who got thrown the captaincy armband like minutes before the toss, made an important half-century to get them up to a vaguely credible score of 202. Marco Jansen, the southpaw, with another 4-wicket bag, and Rabada and Olafia 3 each. Olafia is an interesting one. He came to England as a Kolpak in 2019 because he played that test at Centurion when Kusal Pereira made his extraordinary fourth innings wild chase.
156.
That was his last test match before then. But at that point, he had like sort of 48 test wickets at 20-odd. And he was seen as this massive loss because he was bowling up in the 140s and was getting a lot of wickets. And he's played 3 seasons at Yorkshire, returned to South Africa now that Kolpaks aren't barred from playing, so they don't exist anymore.
He's bowling 120s now, isn't he?
Bowling like high 120s, low 130s. It makes you. It does make you ask the question: what is the county championship doing to very fast bowlers? If you're incentivised to become a different kind of bowler over there, but that's a kind of picking up from our conversation we had with Rory Dollard. Try that again. The conversation we had with Rory Dollard last week on the weekly show.
I wonder if there's some sort of like evil world version of Darren Lehmann, who's in England, who's like, no one's allowed to bowl over 140 k's an hour.
Yeah, kind of the reverse Darren Lehmann.
What is it? Bizarro world. That's what I was trying to think of. Bizarro world Darren Lehmann.
Yeah. No, but I mean, he's still effective though. He still hits the seam and gets it to rear up. It's just that he doesn't bowl quick anymore, but he's still effective, as we've seen with that 3-wicket haul. Then South Africa, in reply, made 229. They were 101 for 2. And in pretty good shape. Then Shardul Thakur into the attack, gets a wicket in his first over. I think he found the edge of Keegan Peterson, who was on 62 at the time. And then he went nuts, took 7 for 61, went through them. And his best figures in Test cricket. They call him, Lord Thacker now, don't they? I don't really know where that comes from. I don't know why they decided he's a Lord, but you say his name on the internet now and it said, no, it's not Shardul anymore, it's Lord Thacker. But one of our faves last year, Jeff, and he started this year in fine form.
Nice to see a thick boy doing well, on the international stage, having a good time, swinging it, bashing a few runs, not in this series, but he
made runs. He made runs here in the second innings, quite important runs too.
Yeah,
made 40 odd.
He's made a few low ones as well, but. And then came the second innings when Rahane and Pujara made 50s. So suck it, internet. Guess what? They can still play. Not that easy to do.
Well, the scrutiny went from sack Rahane, sack Pujara to sack Rishabh Pant.
Okay.
Because he charges Rabada third ball. It's a pretty ugly dismissal. Not the first time, by the way, that Rabada's tried to charge the the opposition's best bowler. In the first over, he's in the middle. In fact, he does it quite a lot to try and set the tone, but it didn't pay off there. Rahul Dravid
trying to build the lead, and so at that point, it was like if he'd stuck around for a 50 partnership at that point, probably India win the test. But.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying that. I think that the way he does that is productive. I think it's if it were me, I'd be saying as Rahul Dravid said, which is that you are entitled to play that way. Just give yourself 5 minutes to get yourself in. It's such a low percentage way of playing the game. Yeah, sure. Sometimes you will hit Jimmy Anderson out of the ground second ball, but the probability of hitting Jimmy Anderson out of the ground second ball is pretty low, using that example from earlier this year. But yeah, India get to 266. Hanuma Vihari making 40 not out, a year on from that extraordinary performance at the SCG when he batted for 4 hours with a torn hamstring. Well, this time around, it was a different kind of role, trying to make resourceful, quick runs down the list after Pujara and Rahane got out quite quickly. He added 38 collectively with Siraj and Bumrah, who made about 3 runs between them. So he was stewarding the tail really well, got them into a position when they were all out at 266. South Africa are chasing 243, batting fourth. You're probably saying at that stage, given they bowled the home team out for 229 in the first innings, that India are favourites. But Dean Elgar opens up as he always does, and they got to a decent start of 93 for 2 at the close of play on night 3. Then the rain came. They got this long delay on day 4, but when the sun came back out, had great support from Temba Bavuma, who got to 23 not out, quite a breezy innings after Rassie van der Dussen made 40, and in the end...
And Neil Manthorpe reckons that Rassie had something to say to Rishabh Pant just before he got out.
Okay.
And Manners was speculating that he'd encouraged him to play the shot that he played. He'd said, go on, like, what are you hanging around for? Aren't you going to...
Mind the Windows Tino style.
Aren't you going to impose yourself? Aren't you going to play a shot, big fella? And, Neil reckons that there was some extra urging there that may have contributed.
Oh, good. I like the sound of that. That's all fun.
Rassie.
All worth it.
Van der Dussen.
I see Bavuma's 23 not out. Had he made 19 not out and let Elgar get to 100, that would have been fitting, I think. Because Elgar's doing a pretty good job, I reckon, as the relatively new South African captain. So they've squared the series, and as you mentioned off the top, they go to Newlands, to Cape Town, for the finale starting on the 11th of January. So by the time you hear this, it'll be at least day 2.
It'll be underway, and if Pujara and Rahane have both been out for low scores, we are going to get torrents of abuse. Torrents of abuse. Guess what? They can still play cricket. Don't care what you say. Suck it. Nerd pledge?
Let's do some nerd pledge, I think.
Let's do some nerd pledge. Nerd pledge. Yes, look, it's a game that we play on the Final Word. We play it. It's about numbers. It's about history. It's about the game. Some lovely people help fund the show by sending us financial contributions, and they do that in a way where it's not a round number of normal bit of currency, it's a specific number, and the number relates to cricket in some way, and we have to guess what it is. But in this instance, it is a round number, but it's also a Nerd Pledge number. It's from Jane, and the number is $3 even, 3.00.
Okay, well, thank you, Jane, for sending that through. She's done so with a clue. My new Nerd Pledge number is, despite appearances, a Nerd Pledge. It's pretty basic, 300. My previous pledge was 213. Final Word magic number. So I don't think it'll take that much work. So, Jeff, how does 300 interact with 213? I'm looking forward to this.
Well, Adam, obviously 213 is the magic number of the Final Word. It's the score of the tied semi-final at Edgbaston. It's the innings that Elise Perry played at the North Sydney Oval in the Ashes Test of 2017, and it is a vast host of other things. Beside, there is an episode where we went through, I think, literally every permutation of the number 213, and it applies to many great things in cricket. But it was the second one of those that took my interest when I saw 300 and I saw 213, and I thought, Elise Perry 213, Elise Perry 300.
Balls.
No.
No?
Not quite. But on the day, I went back and had a look, on the day that this pledge came in, it was the day that Elise Perry took her 300th wicket for Australia.
Very good.
It was during the Test match against India.
Yes.
Late 2021. Bowled a length ball, slashed into the gully by Pooja Vastraka, who's been very damaging with the bat at times, coming into her own as a seam bowling all-rounder.
Yep.
And Beth Mooney, not with the gloves, but in the gully, as she has to do for Australia, because Healy gets the gloves, took a screamer in the gully, and Perry got wicket 300. She's been off with the ball the last couple of years, especially in white ball cricket, but she bowled really well in that Test match. It's like her game's been honed to the point where it's now ideal for Test cricket and less ideal for white ball formats. Maybe, certainly better for 50 overs than 20 at the moment. But she bowled a really good spell to start that Test match. She basically held the bowling together when a couple of the younger players were struggling with nerves and line and all the rest of it. And she did pick up that wicket number 300. So she's only one behind Catherine Brunt. Perry 300, Brunt 301, and the only one ahead of them is Julan Goswami. So
What's Julan on?
Oh, it's like heaps, 380 or something. She's way ahead.
So we could have a situation. I've got a feeling Catherine Brunt's not retiring until she's like 40.
Okay.
Just my sense of it, the way she's talking at the moment.
Right.
So we could, and I don't imagine Perry's retiring before. Well, I was going to say not for a while, but she did kind of say in the 2019 Ashes in England that it could be her final trip there, and that's only a year and a half away. So,
As if she won't go next year.
yeah, she will, won't she?
She'll go.
She's not giving any real retirement
God.
vibes.
I just realised the Ashes in England is next year.
Yeah, I know.
Next
that's
year.
a lot.
Stop playing so many Ashes. Let us have a life.
So
We have things we want to do.
I think Perry and Brunt will both descend upon Julan Goswami. He'll keep taking wickets as well. Although I reckon she might retire at the World Cup.
Yeah, I think
in a
she's
couple of months.
99% nailed on that Mitali Raj and Julan go out together. At the
It
World
could be
Cup.
a little bit like, excuse the crude crossover, when Dunstall and Lockett were chasing Gordon Coventry's 12.99, and then when Lockett got there, I was devastated because Dunstall had to retire at 12.54 because his body fell apart, and his old rival in the following season got there. I wonder whether Brunt and Perry will go all the way and pass Gordon Coventry's 12.99 as well.
Who is Tony Lockett and who is Jason Dunstall in this analogy?
Well, that's a good question. No, I'm not. I'm unwilling to play that game. Who Lockett was the more accurate kick, and Dunstall was the less selfish. Dunstall kicked 12.54 and created 500 through tackles in the forward 50 and gave off another 500 to his teammates. Lockett, by necessity, had to kick all the goals himself because St Kilda were a rabble, he had a slightly better ratio at goal kicking. So who's the more accurate bowler out of Brunt and Perry? Probably Perry.
Yeah.
But then again, Brunt's had to carry the team on her back like Lockett.
Yeah.
So maybe Brunt is like Plugger.
Dunstall had the better mullet.
Dunstall had the better mullet.
Who would carry off a mullet better?
That's true.
I think...
who would do the better
I think
advertisement
Brunt
at
could do a good
Routley's?
mullet.
That'd be the real question. It's
Right.
probably Elise Perry, given she's Australian. I already said to Mitch Scott...
Who's the Robert Di-Domenico of women's test bowling?
I mentioned to Mitch Scott, who's our producer on SEN, that we're going up to Hobart together in a couple of days. And I said, what you need to realise is whenever I go to Hobart, I make Rach take photos of me and Routley's pretending to do the Jason Dunstall commercial. And Mitch, that's going to be you this week.
Mitch, in many ways, you have to fill in for Rachel this week.
Right, where are we? That's Nerd Pledge.
That's Nerd Pledge.
And because we're at the end of the Nerd Pledge segment, we can point at my Brick Lane stubby holder.
Yep.
If you're watching on YouTube, and if you're not, you can just imagine that I'm enjoying a Brick Lane, which I am.
Yep.
The beer that's up for copious awards at the moment, which we've been promoting. It's called the Gab's Hottest 100.
Yep.
It is a...
Is Gab great Australian beer?
I suspect it is.
I feel it is.
Yes.
Yep.
We've been promoting that on our social media feed. It could not be easier to vote. I mean, it's even easier than voting in the federal election where you need no ID. You just go up and get your name crossed off and you go fill out your ballot paper and dump it in the box. It is that easy. And here's the best bit. Brick Lane have 5 beers in the running and you were allocated 5 votes.
Oh.
It's just
Hello,
perfection.
boys.
It could not be more straightforward. It took me about 45 seconds to get my ballot in. Please do the same. I had a beer yesterday.
You don't need to vote below the line.
No, you don't have to vote.
You can just vote the party
Just vote
ticket above the line.
Above the party ticket above the line. And if you are going to vote below the line, like I do, make sure that you put. Make sure that you take a lot of time in thinking about who you hate most to get voted 74th, 73rd, 72nd, and 70th.
It is really hard. It's harder to order the bottom of the ballot than it is the top.
It is. It's like, am I going to put Lion Holmes Crazies last, or am I going to put Pauline Hanson's Crazies last? Am I going to
or Danny Nalia's
or
Crazies.
Danny Nalia's Crazies last? It's like they're all dreadful people, and I want to put them all last. To me, there's a bit of Australian politics for you there. If you're watching on YouTube, probably don't care. That's fine. It's our podcast. We do what we want to. Where were we? Yes. So Brick Lane, please turn out to vote. Please turn out to vote. Do the right thing. It's your obligation, and your planet will thank you for your cooperation. And
the important thing is, if you want to play Nerd Pledge, you can. You can be part of this. You can be in on this. You go to patreon.com/thefinalword. You make a little account. You fill in a thing. You choose what your number's going to be. We see it. We add it to the list. And then, not only do you get to be on the show and play the fun game with us, you're also like a 1 in 4 or 5 chance of winning a slab of Brick Lane, because that's what happens. That's what's going to happen for Jane.
It is.
Jane wins the chance to give away 24 cans to whoever she wants in Australia. Anyone, could be anyone, could be Jane, could be someone else. You can. It will be sent to you by Brick Lane, the opportunity to pick up the beers, and you can pick them up if you sign up for Nerd Pledge.
And if you pick them up, I'm not promising this, and as a vegetarian, maybe I shouldn't be supporting this, but a friend of mine went to collect some Brick Lane over the Christmas period. He played along with the offer code, which was great. 15% off. We'll be doing that again through the month of January once we've got the code up and running again. And they gave him, just before Christmas, they go, do you want a few rashers of bacon as well? And they chucked it in the parcel for him.
Really?
They chucked it in the parcel for him.
Bacon just floating
I don't know,
around?
but they did.
Were they making a bacon beer?
I don't know. But
Amazing.
the point here is that good people doing good things.
There we go.
Hiring local people. Their practices aren't butchering the environment as they make their beer. This is all butchering. There you go.
The only butchering was the bacon. If you want a green terry toweling hat with Brick Lane on the front, you can get one of them as well.
Bloody do.
So, look, there are lots of reasons. Join up, play the game, Brick Lane, vote for them, etc.
All right, we're going to take a breather on the Final Word Weekly. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Women's Ashes, and we're going to talk about, I'm afraid to say, the novel coronavirus.
Woodstock Cricket, home of the finest handmade cricket bats and soft goods. Visit either our showroom or workshop and experience the magic for yourselves. For bookings, contact info@woodstockcricket.co.uk.
Woodstock Cricket Bats, they make officially the best cricket bats in the world. The Good Gear Guide in the Cricketer magazine ranked them number 1 and number 2.
I'm never not going to laugh at the Good Gear Guide.
Good Gear Guide.
I'm never not going to laugh at the Good Gear Guide.
We had it. We used to have it. 20 years ago, it was called bluelight.org. But these days it's about cricket, and it's gone mainstream. It's in a magazine. They do a blind test of all of the bats. So they
all of the gear.
They come unmarked. They put all the kit on. They work out what feels best, what has the best middle, and they picked Woodstock's bats as number 1 and number 2. Gold and silver. What's a famous gold and silver double?
Perkins and Kowalski.
There we go.
Kowalski.
I thought he won the bronze. Didn't he win the bronze?
He wins the silver. Well, you remember Brooksy's call over the top, screaming over the top.
Or was that 92, Kowalski?
No, 92, Houseman, Perkins Houseman. So it was 1-2 there as well. Consecutive Olympic Games. I think 90... in 2000 as well, Hackett Perkins. So they went 1-2 3 times in the event.
2000 Hackett Perkins. Yeah. So that's what it is.
Enough about the 1500 freestyle.
1500 metres. Look, this is important. People need to know. This is why people listen to our ads, because they find out important other things. But these bats are the best 2 bats in the world for the last year. And
too many bats.
And so Woodstock have decided to give away a bat, because why not let someone have the chance? And you can win the giveaway. It's going to happen with the full Woodstock experience.
So this is in Cuckney in Notts, so it's not far away from Trent Bridge. All you need to do, it's pretty straightforward. There'll be a link in the show notes with a post on Instagram from Woodstock, which reflects on the great success that Woodstock had in 2021. It being the new year, we are celebrating the achievements, the 1 and 2 that Jeff mentioned before, the Quinella, the Perkins Houseman, the Perkins Kowalski, the Hackett Perkins, if you like. All you need to do is grab the post and share it in your story on Instagram or on Twitter or on all the other platforms, whatever. But the story's sufficient. Tag 3 mates, like the post, share the post to your story, and follow the Instagram page for Woodstock Cricket. If you do all of those things, you will enter the draw. It'll be pulled out of a hat on the 21st of January, and they'll give you the full experience up at Cuckney, and you'll walk away with a brand spanking new piece of Woodstock kit. And if you're in the UK, what a time for it, by the way. This is the time of the year you want a new bat before you do winter nets. I've seen all the posts of people who are in the nets at the Oval, the scariest nets in the world, where everyone's Joel Garner. I've seen the posts of people at the Lord's nets where you've got to wear the whites to net. I'm seeing it. They're in my feed. People are winter netting right now. Right. Imagine winter netting, bringing in a big bastard Woodstock bat.
I'm just smoking it out of winter nets.
Exactly.
It's fitting that the Jimi Hendrix Experience played at Woodstock. Now you can have the Woodstock Experience in Nottingham. So what that means is it's boutique. You go up there, they take you in, they look at you, they talk to you, they measure you up, they chat about what kinds of cricket you play, how you play, and then they work out what bat you should use. And you try out all the different bats, and you work out what's going to work for you, and it is customised and it's beautiful. It's like getting a wedding dress, but it's a cricket bat.
Right. Probably should move on because I'm laughing like a 14-year-old when one gets measured up. Woodstock Cricket, they make great bats. And also, if you want the discount, it's TFW
20.
20.
Get 20% off.
Woodstockcricket.co.uk.
Even if you don't win one, Get 20% off.
Get 20% off. Couldn't be easier.
That's 20% of the way to winning one.
Back to the show. Final word, Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon. Women's Ashes starting a week early. And there's a lot going on here, Jeff. There was an announcement last week. The one-dayers are going to be in Melbourne after the test match. And the way they've reoriented it is the T20s are starting in Adelaide. The day after the Hobart test match finishes with the men. Then you're off to Canberra. Then you're staying in Canberra. Then you're going to Melbourne. But the point here is they're doing it 7 days earlier in order to give themselves a better chance of not catching Omicron, basically, and getting on that flight to New Zealand. They didn't want to have a situation where they were still playing cricket close to their flight to the World Cup.
Yep.
They've got these slots in the equivalent of hotel queue in New Zealand, and if they lose them, that's it. That's it. There's no more slots. There's no substitute players.
Wow.
There's no other way of doing it because you're
They
allocated.
should play it in Sydney. Heaps of slots.
Well, yeah. There's a lot. Yes, indeed. There's no way of. So, I mean, there's quite a bit going on here because just to play this out, everyone's got Omicron right now. And if everyone's still getting Omicron in deep February when they're going to New Zealand, and I'm not just talking about from Australia either, but around the 8 teams that are playing in this competition in New Zealand, they could have big trouble. I mean, we saw with PNG, I think it was, missing the qualifier a couple of months ago because they had COVID issues and couldn't get into the country and all the rest of it. So the Women's Ashes has been changed because of it. Sean Flegler, who's the
Is this basically just so that everyone can bubble and just
they're already
minimise their
bubbling.
chances
I mean, England are in Australia, but they may as well be in Mozambique in terms of like they're just in hotels.
But they won't have to be travelling. There won't be so much possible crossover risk and all the rest
right,
of it.
yeah, sure.
They can sit still and quiet at home and avoid everybody and then travel
That's
to
it.
New Zealand.
So what they want to do is they want to get the Ashes almost not out of the way, but dealt with, so then they can go into full lockdown and have almost no chance of getting COVID before they jump on that flight to New Zealand. I mean, they've already, as I understand it, the England team, and it's a big travelling group because the A team are out here as well.
Yep.
They've already done, they've effectively a home lockdown without their loved ones, many of them, for the Christmas New Year period.
In order to
get on the flight to Australia. So we spent a lot of time before the Men's Ashes discussing the different hurdles that had to be cleared to get them out here and the 14 days of hotel queue and so on and so forth and how that might have affected their performance. Well, the England women are getting a couple of days of training, a couple of warm-up T20s, and they're into it. So this isn't great. I mean, I appreciate that it's a function of the times, and women's cricket was badly affected by coronavirus the first time around. It feels like they've just copped it in the neck again because this happens to be that the next global tournament is in a country that will show no mercy when it comes to getting in and is so precise about these slots you get to go into the equivalent of their hotel quarantine.
It would have probably been easier to play the World Cup in New Zealand at its original time than it is getting in now.
I do wonder. I mean, without sort of
it was one of the major fuck-ups of the ICC over this whole thing was we'll just postpone it because it's not fair on the lack of preparation. No one's had any preparation since. None of the countries, aside from the couple of rich countries, have been able to play.
Well, it just wasn't true, was it? They weren't doing it because it was just too hard to pull it off.
Yep.
I mean, administratively, it was just too challenging. And I suppose the difference 12 months ago was that they had no vaccination. The players will be heavily vaccinated, and that's a great thing. They're unlikely to get ill. They're professional athletes and so on. But I sort of do wonder whether they might be forced to move this competition. They're not going to have any freedom in New Zealand when they get there anyway. I think that
we're supposed to be moving around New Zealand, playing in all these different places, and every team's playing in different places every day. You certainly wonder whether they might just rip up the schedule and say, all right, well, you're going to play all of your games in Christchurch and
or Dubai.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah,
at least they can control the situation. I mean, I'm not advocating. I'm not saying that they need to pull the ripcord yet, but I hope someone somewhere's thinking about this.
It's not far off.
The players being put into bubble after bubble after bubble is going to create... And as I say, the biggest hurdle, the biggest problem will be, what about when, and it's not if, it's when, a team has a COVID outbreak when they're scheduled to arrive in New Zealand and they can't get in? Yeah. What, are they going to play the World Cup with 7 teams?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, then what if it's...
Bring back young New Zealand like they did in the 72 World Cup.
What if it's Australia? You know, what if the Australian team have an outbreak and they lose Elise Perry, Elisa Healy, and Meg Lanning on the cusp of the tournament?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that will happen, but you can't rule it out happening. The highest profile players, they've had to wait 5 years for this competition. Just putting that out there that this isn't great, and it's not on the radar because we've been talking men's Ashes, and thus,
Yes.
this is kind of coming later in the summer, and I suppose the Omicron thing, people are quite rightly focused on getting, these tests at the moment. They're not focused on global sport. They're worried about the health of their family and making sure that...
Like, the variants changed the conversation since even, say, 2 weeks before the men's Ashes started. We were all about, everything's on track to be better now. It'll all be chill. The state borders will open. Everything's going to be fine.
Yep.
And it's really been in the last month that has changed dramatically, and now we're doing 60,000 cases a day in Melbourne.
Yeah, that's right. So... Anyway, watch this space on that one. Speaking of the aforementioned novel coronavirus, it's caused
Not so novel anymore,
quite
is it?
the scandal.
It's pretty fucking familiar coronavirus.
Quite the scandal in the Big Bash, where they're trying to squeeze in, is it 11 games in 6 days or something like that? I don't think it's getting the sort of attention that they would like. People are paying attention to the COVID outbreaks and the Melbourne Stars having to play a very weakened team. They finally let them start delaying some games, but while they were playing... Brisbane were missing games because they had COVID in their camp.
Yeah.
Perth have got it in their camp.
Everyone's got it.
Well, they've moved the teams around to try and control the situation, but it probably means that we're in a situation.
Melbourne Stars press release where they were like 10 players have COVID, and the only one who didn't was Glenn Maxwell.
And Glenn got it like 2 days later.
3 days later, they're like, Glenn Maxwell has COVID.
Yeah, I do wonder though. I mean, might it be the BBL? I mean, I suppose you just got to suck it up, don't you? It's the team that has the most fit players will probably have the best chance of winning when they get to the Final Four, Final Five.
It's like, I know I've referenced this before, but that the live album from the poet Derek Brown that I gave to you, but where he goes 40 shows in 2 nights. That's the Big Bash now. Can I suggest it doesn't matter the competition integrity of the Big Bash? It doesn't matter.
No.
Who cares?
No.
It's a sideshow. It's not... I know we're not supposed to say this. I know everything's... T20's very serious business and all the rest of it. But the entire point of the Big Bash is that it is played, not what happens. What happens is secondary to the fact that it happens.
Yeah, you know what? Whilst I definitely see your perspective, I wonder the extent to which the fact that it's now seen as not as good as it used to be is well, I mean, the truth is I actually don't even know. Because I'm not as engaged with it as I would have been 5 years ago. I have no reference point to go on from week to week. 5,000 people were at the G yesterday. Now, we both know what 5,000 at the G looks like.
It looks like zero.
It looks like zero. So that's not great. We'll probably get...
But also, why would people go to the G when there's 50,000 COVID cases a week?
Oh, totally. I mean, I'm not... obviously, COVID influences that number, but... And I'm sure we'll get responses from the usual suspects saying that a billion people are watching it on TV.
Sure.
And maybe they are, but I suspect they're not. My gut is that it's nowhere near as part of the national sporting conversation as it was a few years ago. In fact, I go as far to say...
Maybe they have it on, but they don't care. Because a few years ago, it was like, isn't this wild? Club cricketer Craig Simmons is opening and made 100. And now it's like, everyone's a club cricketer.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's fine.
I suppose so.
I'll watch people play club cricket. I'm not proud. I've pulled over to watch suburban cricket because I was like, there's a game on. Might sit here for half an hour and watch it. I mean, I'm not too proud to do that, but it is not a wonderfully high standard. But like I say, I come back to the point of who cares? Who cares what the standard is as long as they get it played this year?
Yeah, as long as they get the content away, as they would say. The Perth Scorchers, for what it's worth, are leading the comp. In fact, I put this together this morning. Maybe there's been a game played since. In all probability, there has. But the Scorchers were leading the comp from the Thunder, the Sixers, the Hurricanes, the Heat, the Renegades, the Stars, and the Strikers. So we'll keep half an eye on that over the next week, and hopefully the COVID situation subsides a little bit.
I think Perth haven't played at home for weeks. They've been
I think Mitch Marsh
else.
Is doing really well. Yeah. I sense that. I feel like Mitch Marsh has had a
sense a disturbance in the Marsh force.
I just feel like Marsh has done good because people have been talking about
no
Mitch.
one's been mean to him.
Well, no, I think the other way. People are saying really nice things about Mitch. So I think Mitch will play in Pakistan, by the way, Smokey.
Okay.
Because they'll if they're going to use Green... So I think there's a possibility Green might open the bowling.
Okay.
And then they'll have Want for another. Yeah.
For 2 spin.
Well,
3 spinners?
This is probably more about Sri Lanka, actually. I think Green might open the bowling in Sri Lanka, which will give them the ability to play an extra spinner.
To play 3 spinners.
And then use Marsh as the third seamer if required.
God, who even gets a game if they play 3 spinners?
Well, Maxwell in Sri Lanka.
But then
So how you would do it
but
is...
he wouldn't be a spinner because he'd be
No, but
top six
but you have the flex to have, like, in that scenario,
Yeah.
you could have a situation
That's
where
still 2
your
bowlers
wicket
in the
keeper's batting
top
8.
six.
You can bat super deep, is what I'm trying to say, because
Right.
they've had a problem. You could have and I'm doing this in the fly a little bit, but it could be Cummins plus Green as your quicks, Lyon plus Swepson as your bowlers. So 3 specialist bowlers batting 9, 10, 11.
Right.
And you could have your wicketkeeper at 8, Green at 7, Maxwell at 6,
Right.
Mitch Marsh at 5, or some version of that.
Yeah.
It'll be fucking fun if they did something like that.
Be hilarious.
I mean, especially
I'd be up for it.
in Sri Lanka. I can't wait to get over there.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to Pakistan.
Yeah.
In fact, I better press stop on the podcast to book my flights.
But will they do it like the way they picked Moses Enriquez as an all-rounder in Sri Lanka, and then Steve Smith just didn't bowl him? They bowled something like 196 overs before he got it.
Well, they might need to use these guys though. I suppose it depends on how Cummins sets it up. They might go the other way and say that Stark was outstanding in Sri Lanka 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and they want the reverse swing. And the reverse swing element was a big part of why Australia won in India in 2004.
That was an era when Australia were reverse swinging the ball though in 2016.
True.
Haven't seen a lot of that recently.
True.
Just throwing that one out there.
Yeah, Deirdre Chambers. What a coincidence. This has been The Final Word. I'm Adam Collins. He's Jeff Lemon. If you like what we do, you can support us at patreon.com/The Final Word. If you like our chats about the Ashes, they'll continue at Hobart, where we will be. We will be going from Sydney to Hobart, albeit via Melbourne,
Yes.
for the final test. We will then...
Well, considering all the COVID tests we'll do between now and then, it's the Sydney to Hobart snot race.
Yes, that's very good. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can do the Melbourne to Devonport on the way. We can get we could have got the Spirit.
Yeah.
Oh, why didn't we get the Spirit?
Oh, because you don't want to watch me throw up for 24 hours.
Ah, the Spirit would have been great. The Melbourne to Devonport.
Not good
Our
on
own
boats.
version of the Melbourne to Devonport. Others doing the Sydney to Hobart. We'll do the short one, thanks. We love working with Brick Lane, for they are great people. BrickLaneBrewing.com. You can support them. Please support them in the ballot they are contesting at the moment for the Hottest 100. Woodstock Cricket, as we said in the middle of the show, if you share the post and you share it with 3 mates and you add it to your story and you like it and you follow them on Instagram, you can win yourself a bat. It couldn't be easier than that. If you're in the UK, I strongly recommend it. If you're a supporter of ours on Patreon already, we love you and we cherish you. If you watch what we do on YouTube, you can...
As Jonah Hill said to Channing Tatum in the reboot of 21 Jump Street, I fucking cherish you, man.
Well, I cherish all of you who are watching as well on YouTube. If you don't follow us, so you can see Jeff, as I said off the top, wearing a blue singlet and a pair of swimming trunks, and me dressed the way I'm always
Summer,
dressed.
baby.
Sitting in his backyard.
Apologies to everyone in the Northern Hemisphere, but it's summer.
Yes,
baby.
My baby is back in nursery today.
Aw.
She was she cried her eyes out when she
Winning
was
friend.
dropped at the door at nursery today. Rach told me. So
This
they're
was the
back
first
into
day she hasn't had constant attention
constant
from someone in
attention
months.
from family. But anyway, it's the way it goes. And we will also be making story time this weekend, although I have no bloody idea when we're going to do it. You know what? We're probably not doing story time this weekend. Let's be honest.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. Maybe story time will drop on Saturday. Maybe we'll be too bloody busy to do it. Either way, once I get back to England, we'll be doing the weekly
Back
show
in the regs.
and story time regularly.
Doing the 400 revisits that we haven't done.
Exactly.
For the
We'll be back in the groove. And if you stay with us on Patreon, you can also chat in Discord, and people tend to like doing that.
Okay.
That's it. It's been The Final Word, Season 11, Episode 10. Let's do it all again sometime.
Adios.
Bye for now.